One of the most valuable gemstones in the world is a flawless, deep-colored emerald. Now, these gemstones have been prized by humans for thousands of years. Now, emerald is a bluish-green colored variety of the mineral beryl. And we're going to talk more about emeralds today. In fact, we're going to talk everything about emeralds today. My name is Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and we're going to get into emeralds, where they occur, all about the geology of them, prospecting for them, and how you can find emeralds potentially yourself. So let's get into it right now. Now, as I said, emerald is a form of the mineral beryl. And beryl it's a mineral that's been known for many thousands of years, and it comes in different colors and forms. Actually, if it doesn't have any coloring agent in it, it's colorless. It's made up of beryllium, which is a rare mineral, a rare element, and aluminum and silicon and oxygen. Well, aluminum, silicon, and oxygen, they're all very, very common in the Earth's crust. But beryllium, that's a different story. It's very unusual. And in fact, usually when beryllium is present in a deposit, it will come out in the form of the mineral beryl. Now, there are other deposits and other beryllium minerals and that sort of thing, but perhaps the most common form of any beryllium-bearing mineral is the mineral beryl. Let's take a look at that and how beryllium is the essential element of beryl. Let's take a look at some diagrams.
So here is a model of the crystal structure of the mineral beryl. In this model, the purple triangles are marked with Si, and those are the silicon atoms. The blue blocks marked with Al, that's the aluminum atoms. And then the light green marked with Be is the beryllium in the atom. And then the oxygen, which links all of this stuff, is not shown just for matter of simplicity. Now, in valuable mineral specimens like emerald or aquamarine, others, it's usually some other element. In the case of emerald, chromium substitutes for the aluminum. And so some of these, or even a few of these blue Al blocks of aluminum would be substituted by a green-colored chromium. You can see the alignment of the aluminum atoms forms a hexagon, and indeed the outer shape of the beryl crystal is a hexagon. Here is a colorless crystal of beryl, meaning that it has no coloring agent to make it some other color. It's colorless, but you can see the six-sided hexagonal outline on the outer part of the crystal.
Now, emerald is the form of beryl that's colored a beautiful blue-green color by the presence of either the element chromium or the element vanadium, or a combination of the two of them. Now, the amount of chromium or vanadium in a beryl crystal determines the depth of color. If there's only a little bit of these other elements that give the green color, then the beryl, the emerald, is going to be light colored. If there's a lot more of them in the crystal, then the emerald will be much deeper colored. But the trick is you need to form a beryl crystal in an environment where there's both chromium or chromium and vanadium, one or the other, because those are what's necessary to give it that color green. The problem is that most of the environments where beryllium is present and forms the mineral crystal beryl, usually there's not chromium or vanadium. In fact, the geology of beryllium and the geology of chromium and vanadium are so different that they don't normally occur together. And that's why emerald is a rare mineral, because you don't very often get those all together in one place. Let's take a look at some emerald crystals of different colors and shades.
Here's a pair of fairly light-colored emeralds. Now, there are some that are actually even slightly lighter than this, but you get too much lighter and it won't be called an emerald. This beautiful emerald crystal is a little bit deeper colored, showing a little bit darker color green. And finally, these are very deeply colored emeralds. Now, there are some that are even darker than this, but these crystals have a larger percentage of the chromium and vanadium coloring agents that give emerald its characteristic hue.
Now, as I mentioned, there's other elements that color beryl crystal that's, like I say, without any coloring agent. It's colorless. But there are other elements that give color to beryl crystals. Of course, those won't be emeralds. Perhaps the most common coloring agent for beryl is a bit of iron in the right place in the crystal, and that can give it a blue color. And that blue colored crystal of beryl is known as aquamarine, and is also an important gemstone that's been known for a long time. In fact, there are yellows and pinks and even kind of raspberry red colors to beryl. Let's take a look at some of the other colors of beryl that occur in different places that aren't emerald but are still beautiful gemstones.
This is an example of golden beryl. It's a beryl colored yellow by iron in a different form than that which colors aquamarine. Here's a grouping of different colored aquamarines. On the left, the pink colored morganite. In the middle, the blue colored aquamarine. And on the right, the green colored beryl, which is not emerald. This is a green produced by simultaneously having the blue of aquamarine and the yellow of the golden beryl I just showed you, and it gives you a green color, but it's not the tone known as emerald. All of these gems come in light to dark colors depending on how much of the coloring agent they have in them. This is a very light colored aquamarine. Mid-color aquamarine blues are much more desirable, like this one. Of course, the most desirable aquamarines are the deep blues, like this example. The beautiful pink variety of beryl, known as morganite, is also a very highly prized gemstone. Years ago, I found this beautiful pink morganite beryl on the dump of an old gemstone mine in northern San Diego County. Perhaps the rarest of all the beryls is this beautiful raspberry red version, which is found only in a few areas in Utah and mostly mined from one mine. This deep red beryl is colored by lots of manganese as the coloring agent. Now, the pink varieties I just showed you are colored by a little bit of manganese in the crystal, but if you get a lot of it, this is the kind of result you get. And it's found only in some unusual deposits, ones a lot different from where the light pinks are found.
Now, emerald's lush green and beautiful tones have excited the imagination of the wealthy for thousands of years. And the name emerald comes from the Greek term smaragdus. And that's not really that close to emerald, but if you go through different languages and eventually into English, you end up with emerald. The color reflects the green of spring and growth, which makes it the perfect birthstone for the month of May. The first known emerald mines that mankind worked were in Egypt, and they were worked as long as 3,500 years ago. The beautiful jewelry that contains emeralds has been prized by kings and queens and the wealthy for thousands of years. And in fact, it's thought that Cleopatra was especially fond of emeralds, and that might make sense since there were emerald mines in Egypt. Let's take a look at some jewelry, both modern and ancient, of the emerald gem that had been so prized by the wealthy and powerful.
As I said, emerald and diamond and other jewelry like this has been prized for centuries by the rich and powerful. Beautiful emeralds have been fashioned into rings, both in older, more standard styles like this, and in very modern styles like this, with a beautiful deep green emerald cabochon and a few little accent diamonds on the side. Emeralds have been extensively used in ornate royal crowns like this one. Here's a close-up of some of the beautiful deep green emeralds that are part of this crown. Beautiful deep green emeralds have also been used in a variety of sacred religious items like this piece.
Now, one of the unusual things about emeralds is that they're still prized even if they have flaws and cloudy spots and cracks and stuff in them. They're not as valuable, of course, as a flawless emerald, but they're still highly prized and still get used in jewelry very commonly. This is kind of different because for the other forms of gem beryl, like aquamarine or morganite that I mentioned, it pretty much needs to be flawless in order for the gem to be valued as a faceted gemstone. Now, there are a few other gems, that they do value largely for the color, and that's why emerald is valued, even though it has flaws, is because it's valued chiefly for its beautiful color. Another gem that falls in that category is ruby. Ruby is also accepted with flaws in it. And interestingly enough, the green of emerald is colored by chromium usually, and the red of ruby is also colored by chromium. Two different, very different colors, but different minerals, and the different element is, the same element is what gives rise to those two very different colors. Now, when emeralds are full of flaws or have a lot of flaws in them, they actually can be very tough to cut. I've facet cut some emeralds before, and if you have too many flaws in them, it makes it tough to get a good polish or to get a good quality gemstone. But they still get cut and they still have value. Experts argue back and forth about what constitutes a lighter green colored beryl that isn't an emerald and a deeper green colored beryl that is an emerald. And so, there's some dispute that happens over that, when you're right on the line. But let's take a look at some different pictures of emeralds.
This is a very large emerald. It's very famous. It's called the Hooker Emerald. And you can see that it's very nearly flawless. It has great color, and there's just not much in the way of flaws in this stone. That's why it's so famous. Here's an emerald, a bit more flawed, but still very clean. This is considered a very good emerald. You can see a line of flaw at the bottom and some on the side, a few others. But really, this is considered a very nice stone for an emerald. And here yet another stone with more flaws than the last. You can see some flaws. You look around all the edges of the stone, you can see flaws. You can see flaws in the middle. And they're still fairly clean. It's not as nice as the last stone, but it definitely has significantly more flaws. And jewelers have developed a term for flaws like this. They call it jardin, which is a French word meaning garden. And literally, it's a garden of flaws. And every emerald is unique because its set of flaws is different. Even if the stone is the same size and the same carat and the same color, its flaws will be unique. It's like a fingerprint. And here's yet another stone with even more flaws, with a much greater jardin, that garden of flaws, and so much so that the stone really isn't wholly transparent. I would describe it as more like highly translucent. You just don't see much coming back from the facets on the underside of the stone. And again, a stone like this is much, much less valuable than the cleaner stones that I've just shown you. And here's a pair of rings with lots of flaws in the emerald. And, these stones are fairly light colored emeralds and lots of flaws. They just don't have the same value. So beware when somebody tries to sell you this as a high value emerald.
Now, figuring the value of emeralds, they take into account flaws and coloration and size and other things. And emerald honestly can go from being relatively inexpensive if it's not clear and it's full of flaws to highly expensive, like I say, in a clear, flawless, deep color green, good sized stone. It can be one of the most expensive gemstones of all, even more expensive than similar sized diamonds. Some gems that have a good crystal form and a lot of flaws are actually more prized as specimens by mineral collectors than they would be if they were broken out of the crystal matrix and tried to be cut into some sort of jewel. So it's important to remember that emeralds, if they're low quality, can range from, a few tens of dollars a carat to the best, highest quality up to more than $100,000 a carat. And that's a really wide range. There are also a number of different processes that people used to try and hide or eliminate or make up for those flaws. They get dipped in various oils or have agents that flow into the cracks to kind of try and seal some of the cracks. There's different techniques that are used, but sometimes they can make a significant difference in the appearance of the emerald, and usually for the better.
So here is an example to show some different kinds of stones and how the treatment process affected them. You know, every stone, like I say, has a unique fingerprint of flaws, and the treatment processes affect different stones differently. Some it works great on, some it works so-so on, and some it hardly works at all. The upper stone pair, you know, before and after, you can see it only affected it a little bit. They say minor affection. But then the middle stone, you know, I actually think that's a pretty good change. There's a lot more visible flaws in the before than the after. So that's pretty good. And then, of course, the bottom one, there's a huge change. It goes from being highly flawed and, you know, translucent to being, you know, mostly clear with lots of flaws, but still a lot better. The trick is with these treatments is that sometimes they change color. And so you could have a stone that looks good when you buy it, but 5 years or 10 years down the road, the oil or resin that they put in starts to change color, or may get different appearances, or may turn cloudy, and suddenly your pretty decent looking stone goes back to being a pretty ugly stone. So that's why the untreated stones are much more highly prized than the treated but still looks okay type stones.
Now, emeralds come from all around the world, and they vary in quality. Most emerald mines around the world really have only produced small amounts. There's only a handful of emerald mines that have really produced significant amounts of emerald, large amounts of emerald. And there's a lot of them that produce smaller amounts and still can have valuable gems. Let's talk about the places in the world where emeralds have been mined and take a look at some examples of emeralds from different locations. And also we'll start with looking at a map of where emerald deposits are worked around the globe.
So here is a map of the emerald deposits of the world, at least of the more important ones. And of course, there are a number of very small emerald deposits that are scattered in other places that are not shown on this map. Now, you can see they group into several groupings. There's a series of scattered deposits in Europe, and these are important historically, having provided emeralds during the time of the Romans and then into the Middle Ages. There's a deposit in Egypt, and that historically was the first one ever worked. There's a set of deposits along Eastern Africa, Southeastern Africa, and these produce some nice gems. There's also a grouping in Eastern Brazil that have been very productive, and a few scattered across Australia, mostly in Western Australia. And then, of course, in the United States, it only lists 2. There are a couple of others that are known, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those. One, including a very recent discovery, which shows that prospecting for emeralds is not over. There are still emeralds to be found. Well, let's take a look at some of the emeralds from these different areas and talk about them further. What I also want to note is that up in northwestern South America, in the country of Colombia, it only shows, a couple little spots. But the truth is, the Colombia Emerald area is a whole region and has the world's most productive mines in it and continues to produce some of the very finest and very highest qualities. So really, of all the different locations marked on this map, it's really the ones in Colombia that have been the most historically productive for, say, the last 400 or 500 years. Here's a beautiful emerald from Brazil, from the deposits of eastern Brazil. And you can see it's a good color, quite clean, very few flaws. It has some, but almost all emeralds do. A good quality stone. Here is a set of rough and cut stones from Ethiopia, reflecting some of the product of Eastern Africa. Here is some emerald from Afghanistan. In modern times, both Afghanistan and Pakistan are important producers of emerald. This is an example of some emerald from Habichtal in what is now Austria, part of the European deposits. These were very important historically and produced emeralds throughout the Roman period and through the Middle Ages, but are not as important in modern times. This beautiful emerald is from the United States. It's from deposits, I believe, in North Carolina. And you can see it's a very beautiful piece on really nice matrix. And while these deposits do produce some beautiful emeralds, they've not produced huge amounts. This example is probably the lowest grade example of emerald that I've showed you, but it's a piece I collected in my home state of Nevada. Now, Nevada is not known for its emeralds, and believe me, the quality of emeralds that it produces are really low. This is a low example even, but it does produce some pieces nice enough maybe to cut a cabochon from. This piece I want to show you because this is from a deposit in Southern California in San Diego County, not awful far from the town of Julian, that is only discovered in recent years. It's an example of the fact that, you can go out and prospect for emerald deposits and find things even in recent decades. Now, the San Diego County area is well known for producing different colors of beryl, morganite, and of course some aquamarine, but it was never known before for emerald. And it happened so that there was some beryl deposits in an area that did contain some chromium, and the result is a beautiful emerald. And in our survey of emerald-producing regions, there is no way we can leave off Colombia. Colombia is the most important producer of fine quality and large amounts of emerald. This very famous and very large emerald that I showed you earlier is also from Colombia.
Now, mining methods for extracting emeralds from the rock at a mine require removal of tons and tons of rock to get small amounts of emeralds. And you have to be super careful so that you don't destroy the emeralds. Obviously, if you put in a whole lot of dynamite and blow it up, you're gonna blow your beautiful emerald crystals to smithereens. And things that might be worth thousands of dollars a carat will be worth nothing because they're sand, just green sand because you blew them all up. So there's special techniques used to extract the emeralds whole without damaging them. And every mine produces a wide range of qualities and sizes of crystals for the market. Let's look at some images of emerald mines and emerald mining, and maybe even talk a little bit about the geology of emeralds.
The individual emeralds have to be mined carefully and mined by hand because, as I say, you don't want to break things and destroy things in the extraction process. The emeralds can be found in just little thin veinlets sometimes, and it makes mining of them more difficult. Emeralds are mined both from surface pits and from underground, as shown in this Brazilian underground emerald mine. This image shows another reality of emerald mining, and this is a surface open pit mine for emeralds. And you can see that you've got the worker who's extracting the emeralds by hand, but then you've got a supervisor and a security person and a lockbox. It's a high security item because emeralds are very small and yet very valuable, and it's a temptation to a worker to hide them away in his clothes or even swallow them, that sort of thing. So instead, he's very closely supervised, and anything he pulls out of the ground has to go into a lockbox, which goes to a secure area in the mine. At Muzo, which is one of the most famous emerald mines in Colombia, one of the largest and most productive, the tailings slide off the side of a hill and go down into a local stream. Hundreds of local people gather to try their luck at finding emeralds in the tailings, and indeed there are some. There are finds made, and just stuff that's missed by the larger formal mining operation. But this provides a source of income for, like I say, as you can see, many hundreds of individuals. A small find of emeralds like this can keep one of these workers in food and other supplies for a matter of months.
Now, in this day of the internet, there are a lot of sites and places that will sell you emeralds directly. And that can be a bit dangerous. I'm not saying that every place out there that sells emeralds direct over the internet is illegitimate, but I can assure you that there are some places that sell fakes and synthetics and other things as real, earth mined emeralds that aren't. That's why it's important to take a very close, a close care, especially when you're buying emeralds over the internet. Any gemstone can be faked, and one of the stones that are faked quite often is the emerald. It can be made with, I've seen fake emeralds where they literally take two very pale pieces like of aquamarine that's not very valuable, or near colorless beryl that's not very valuable, and they have a top half and a bottom half. And if you look at the stone, it's nearly colorless, right? Very pale blue or something like that. Well, they take a deep green glue and they glue the top to the bottom. And then when you look at it, you're looking right through that deep green glue and it looks great. It looks like a flawless, deep colored emerald. But really it's inexpensive, very pale aquamarine that really has very little, only a little bit of value, and certainly not the value of a flawless deep colored emerald, because the other forms of beryl do come in colorless or come in flawless varieties much more often than does the emerald. So believe me, there are plenty of different fakes out there. I even know of a person who bought a beautiful emerald crystal. And it was the same kind of thing that I just mentioned. They'd taken a natural crystal of very pale aquamarine or near colorless beryl and sliced it in different directions. Because the natural shape of a beryl crystal is a hexagon. And so they'd sliced it along the corners and then glued the pieces together with that deep color green glue. And man, the thing really looked good. Except it wasn't. And the person who bought it in Colombia, where they mine a lot of emeralds, and it was sold to them as a beautiful natural emerald crystal. They got taken. So be careful when you're buying gemstones, especially through the internet or even out in the field. It can be kind of dicey. The other thing about emeralds is that they can make synthetic emeralds. Now these crystals have exactly the same makeup, the same chemicals. They're made of beryllium, aluminum, silicon, and oxygen, colored by chromium or chromium and vanadium, so that they have the same beautiful color and the same beautiful characteristics as a natural emerald crystal. And, as long as crystals like this are sold as man-grown, lab-grown types of crystals, I'd say that's fair. It's not a problem if you buy it for what it is. It's when crystals like that are sold as if they were real mined emeralds, which the real mined emeralds do have a lot higher value than the lab-grown ones, because, hey, let's face it, you can, if you have the right chemicals and the right techniques, you can grow emeralds. And in fact, coming up someday in a video, probably next year, I'm going to try and grow some larger emeralds. The truth is, I've actually already grown emeralds in the past. These are little sand-sized crystals of emerald, and you can see them, barely with your eye, but with like a loupe to magnify them. They look good, but it's really like the size of sand, so it's not suitable for gem use. I'm going to try and grow bigger ones. I've got a bigger platinum crucible, and I'm going to try and produce some real synthetic emeralds myself. It'll be a challenge that I'll do, like I say, maybe next year. Synthetic emeralds are also grown hydrothermally. The technique I'm going to use is called flux fusion, and basically I produce a molten, almost like a lava, that has the right chemical makeup that the emeralds will crystallize out of it. But they also use a hydrothermal technique, which is really a bit more like what happens in nature, where hot water-based solutions are used to grow the emerald crystals. Laboratory-grown emeralds are generally marketed as either created or lab-grown, rather than using the term synthetic, just because the other terms are better for marketing purposes.
Here are some emeralds that were grown by the molten salt, high temperature, red hot heat in a platinum crucible, using the kind of methods that I'm looking to use when I try myself. But you can see they're pretty stones, and they can be grown very clean and with a few, if any, flaws. And they look very much just like their natural counterparts. But it is possible to distinguish them using gemological measurements and techniques.
Now, normally I do a lot of my videos about crystals and finding gold and that kind of stuff. And if you have any interest in finding gold for yourself, because there is gold out there to be found, take a look at some of my other videos. And if you have any interest, I wrote a book to teach people the skills of how to go out and find your own gold for yourself. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now.
So this is my book, Fistful of Gold. You can see it's an encyclopedia distilling down my 45 plus years of prospecting experience plus my degree into the parts that you need to know. I spent most of 10 years writing this. It was not just a simple effort that, I sat down and wrote it. You can see it's like 250,000 words. It's not something you're going to read through in a day or maybe even a week or more. But it's got a lot of information and reference material that you can come back to. You can read it once and read it again and get more out of it because there's just that much depth of material in this. I wrote this book because I want you to have the skills to go out and find fistfuls of gold for yourself. And if you have the skills and know what you're doing and get out in the field and make a real effort, you can find significant gold. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that because, gold, it wouldn't be, close to $2,000 an ounce, which is what it is right now. It wouldn't be so expensive if it was easy to find. It's not easy. You just can't walk out into an old gold field and start picking up nuggets. If the gold was easy to see and find, the old timers would have picked it up and taken it themselves. So you got to have skill. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to master what it takes to find gold, and you've got to have the persistence and put in the effort to find the material, to find the gold or diamonds or gemstones that you're looking for. Now, this book has geology, it has facts about gold, it has stuff about diamonds and platinum, but it's mostly about gold deposits, how gold deposits form, how placer and nuggets form, all the questions you've probably wanted to ask. The book is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, but you can look up on Amazon, Fistful of Gold, and by Chris Ralph, and find this book. Now, the book, if you look at it, it has a very high rating. It has like a 4.7 or 4.8 out of 5, which is really high. I mean, it's hard to please everybody, but I'm close to a 5 out of 5, not far from it, right? So it's been out. I've sold more than 15,000 copies of this book, and I've had tremendous response, tremendous positive response by the people who buy it. And I think if you buy it, you'll be just as happy with it. Now, in addition to my book, I also have a website that I do, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my website and show you some images from the website right now. Now, my website is nevadaoutbackgems.com, and I'll put a link to the prospecting page, this prospecting encyclopedia page, down in the description below, but you can find it at Nevada Outback Gems. I sell some jewelry, turquoise, other gemstones there. I don't always keep the inventory perfectly up to date, so if you're interested in anything you see, do contact me first before trying to send me money or anything, because I want you to be able to get what you order. But the website has lots of different stories, old adventures, even some stories, true stories from the old-time miners of the 1800s. So I think it's something you'll find interesting. The other thing I want to go back to is that all my comments, I want you guys to ask questions on the comments for my videos. I answer 100% of the comments that are made on my videos. Now, sometimes if somebody just says, hey, great video, I really enjoyed it, the comment may just be, well, I'm really glad you liked it. Or if it's a simple question. And sometimes I get people who ask me questions, I would take a book to answer that question. And I recommend that they just buy the book. But I answer all my questions. I try to help people as much as I can. I'm here to help you. So if you're interested in gaining the skills, if you're interested in knowing what you need to know to be successful, follow along with me. subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so that they'll let you know when I come out with new videos, and I try to do that pretty much every Saturday morning. And you'll enjoy with me, you'll come along with me, we'll have an adventure together, and we will find some nice gold and see what it's really like getting out in the woods, or the deserts, or the mountains, wherever we land, wherever the gold is, wherever the diamonds are, wherever the platinum is. Come along, we'll have some fun. And I'll see you real soon on the next video.